Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Healthy AF podcast. With me today is my good friend, Ben Azadi. Ben, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it.
Dude, I love you, Zane. I love what you're doing. It's an honor to be on your podcast. Big fan of your podcast.
Well, thank you, Ben. And I invited Ben on to talk about, he's got a very special project that's about to launch. He's got a new book called Metabolic Freedom. And I wanted to bring him on to talk about this book because it's a big deal. He's put a lot of time and work into this, and it's years of his coaching and years in the keto space. And it's really, I think it's your brainchild, isn't it? Here we got
Absolutely. That's my life's work. So like you mentioned, 17 years in the space and working with thousands of students, doing my own experiments on myself. So putting that into a book, a manual for the metabolism, that's what the book is about.
That's awesome. And you recently made a change. Many people might know you from Keto Kamp, but you've really rebranded to Metabolic Freedom. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what kind of drove that shift?
Yeah, and you and I have very similar philosophies. We love keto. We love carnivore. We see them as tools, but not the only tools in the shed. And while I still love keto and carnivore and still teach it and practice it, it's not the only thing I teach. Not the only thing you teach. It's a tool in the shed. And I wanted to reach more people. We know that we live in a country, but not just the United States, the world as a whole is a very sick country, very sick world. We have a lot of people who are very metabolically unhealthy, and study after study show this. I mean, you have a lot of great content showing this, and some of the research I put in the book is about the state of metabolic disease here in the United States and also in the world. So the reason I rebranded was because I didn't want to just be about keto. I wanted keto to be a tool and a piece to the puzzle, but not the only thing that you need to do. So it's now more broad. It's Metabolic Freedom. That's the new podcast, Metabolic Freedom Podcast, which you've been on right here behind me, recording a podcast with me. So that was the major reason why I wanted to reach more people, reach the masses. I didn't want somebody to hear that, oh, this is just a keto guy and get turned off, because we know keto is amazing when you do it the right way, but it also could have a bad rap to it. A lot of people don't understand it. They think it's about just eating a whole bunch of bacon and eggs and cheese, and that's one way to do it, but it's really a metabolic process. Keto is. It's an incredible metabolic process. So yeah, Zane, that's the reason why I wanted to rebrand and get it open to the masses so I could educate more people.
Right. Okay. And that matches with the book. Obviously, the book is called Metabolic Freedom. So your whole, your podcast shifts to Metabolic Freedom. And I agree. I agree with you 100%. That is a much more inviting name, and really the goal. Rather than focus on the strategy or the tool, you focused on the ultimate goal, which is metabolic freedom. That's what we all want.
That's it.
So that's awesome. Let's talk about it a little bit. I mean, like you said, we have very similar philosophies on a lot of things. One of them was one of the bigger arguments around weight loss and diet and correcting metabolism is this whole calories in, calories out philosophy, which really seems to treat sort of like all food the same, without a whole lot of difference in quality or in looking at even a macronutrient impact. So let's talk about that. I mean, what is your official stance on the whole calories in, calories out? How do you address that in the book?
Very important topic, because you're right. That is one of the most popular methods to weight loss, even to this day, is the old calories in versus calories out model. And for many years, I followed that model. I used to own a gym here in Miami, a CrossFit gym, and I did these seminars, The Science of Fat Loss. This is like back in 2013. And I would teach the members of the gym to calculate their total daily energy expenditure, their resting basal metabolic rate, and then create a calorie deficit in the foods they eat to burn fat, right? We know 3,500 calories is about 1 pound of fat. So if you do that enough times in a deficit, you could equal the weight loss you want to achieve. And interesting thing about that philosophy and that approach is that it does work in the beginning. And what ends up happening is it stops working. And the solution is usually, well, just exercise more to burn more calories and cut your calories more at the same time to create more of a deficit. And you could continue doing that and you'll lose weight. But the body's very smart. The number one priority, for the body is survival. So if you are getting a calorie deficit and your energy demands are less and less because your metabolism is now slowing down to match the caloric deficit you've created, you can only go so far. You can only go so low with your calories. And all of a sudden you have a slow metabolic rate. You have an inefficient metabolic metabolism. and you're frustrated. Now you start to rebound, you start to gain weight. But not only that, you're now hungrier than ever before because your leptin levels, as you know, is the hormone that tells you you're full, put down the fork, plummets. And in the book, Metabolic Freedom, I talk about The Biggest Loser, which we all know that show in the United States. It was a very popular show where they had these obese contestants. They put them on a caloric deficit, extreme exercise, and they all lost weight. And they celebrated them in the final episode. They cheered them on, and they lost all this weight. They had this amazing transformation. But what they didn't track is what happened after. And what happened after is that most of the contestants rebounded big time. They gained the weight back. Some of them gained more weight than where they were at before they even started the show. And they destroyed their metabolism. Their leptin levels plummeted. And Dr. Fungo says that's why we never see a Biggest Loser reunion show, because it doesn't work long term. Now, calories matter. They're just not the most important thing to focus on. The most important thing to focus on is twofold. I talk about this in the book. Hormones, so the metabolic response from those calories, meaning the quality versus the quantity, and then cell inflammation. If we have cell inflammation and if our hormones are out of whack, it's going to be difficult to lose weight. And so many people are trying their best to lose weight. I know you see this being in the same space as me, Zane. They step on the scale. They want to lose 50 pounds. They start to go into a deficit. They start to deprive themselves. They rely on willpower, and none of that is necessary. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to count calories. You don't have to weigh your food. You don't have to rely on willpower and sheer just deprivation. None of that is necessary. It's actually really easy. The body gets healthy in order to lose the weight versus the calories in versus calories out approach of losing weight to get healthy. That is because when you're overweight, you don't have a weight problem. I used to be obese. I never had a weight problem. It is a weight symptom. It's a result of the actual problem, which is hormones and cell inflammation. So when we look at the United States, there's 3 studies that I put in the book. Number one, a study from 2016 from the Mayo Clinic. This study set out to determine how many Americans live an active, healthy lifestyle, and they based it off of 4 main criteria. The first criteria, Zane, was that they don't smoke cigarettes. The second criteria was that they exercised moderate to vigorous activity for at least 150 minutes total a week. The third criteria was that they ate what they call a healthy diet, which was just a diet that was minimally processed. And the fourth criteria was that if they were a male, they had a body fat percentage of 20% or less, and female 30% or less. Out of those 4 criterias, only 2.7% of Americans hit that target.
Wow.
That's it.
I would have thought at least 6 or 7.
Yeah, not even
2.7.
2.7%. And that was before COVID. It got worse after that, right? Then we have the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill study from 2018 showing that around 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, followed by the study that came out in 2022 showing it's actually closer to 93% or so of Americans being metabolically unhealthy. So the answer is why? Do they just need to eat less and move more? They've tried that. If it worked, we wouldn't have this issue. Everybody's tried that. Somebody watching right now or listening, chances are you've tried it. I've been there myself. And it's a huge distraction to what really matters, which is your metabolism and hormones and cell inflammation.
I agree. No, I agree. That's amazing. I hadn't heard of that first study you mentioned, but I mean, that's it's surprising. And then when you look around, when you walk through a city or you walk through a neighborhood, you can see it. You really can see it. And it's sad. And it's disturbing, and I think we've become, on some level, a little desensitized to how, metabolically unhealthy most Americans are. And you really don't notice it until maybe you go out of the country and go somewhere like, would just be another country where maybe food is a little closer to a traditional diet, and there's less processed food being consumed. And it's like, oh, these people look really thin and fit and happy and, and it's a different profile that you're looking at of people.
Because I mentioned that I referenced Italy in the book, and
Mm.
I referenced how Italy has a fraction of our obesity rates, a fraction of our diabetes rates, and they have a longer lifespan. Their lifespan is around 82 years, and ours here is around 77, 78. So you would think, okay, are they exercising more? No, they don't have the amount of gyms
Nope.
we have. They have a fraction of the gyms we have. Yeah, they walk more, okay. But what are they doing that we're not doing? Well, you mentioned it's the food. It's the processed stuff that they have banned and outlawed. They outlawed glyphosate back in 2016, red dyes back in 2016. Yet, as of this moment, that hopefully this changes, but as of this moment in the United States, we allow all of that. And our food supply is poisoned. It's creating inflammation. It's creating metabolic dysfunction. So yeah, you look at other countries, not just Italy, and that is the big factor there. Their food supply is not as poisoned as our food supply in the United States.
Right. Right. No, it's a big difference. It's, like I said, moving, natural movement, but they are not extra fit. They are going to gyms. That's not really part of their culture. That's really American culture. And it doesn't seem to be working too well because gyms are pretty full.
Yes.
And I'm a gym guy. Like, I'm a fitness guy. I started fitness, 27 years ago. And I can tell you, if you're not eating correctly, you are, you're trying to walk up the down escalator when you're working out.
Yes.
You're moving, but you're not going to get very far. And so I think, you've got multiple tools that you mentioned throughout the book. Another one being like intermittent fasting. One, I think that's a big part of what you help, coach your people with. And yet there are some concerns around intermittent fasting on some level, either whether it's long-term or even for women. We've heard that a lot come up in the last, I'd say 2 or 3 years, personally, 4 years maybe, about how intermittent fasting affects men differently than women. Is that something you've encountered in your coaching?
Yeah, you're right. Intermittent fasting, the way that I explain it is it's like a chainsaw. A chainsaw could get you amazing results if you know how to use it, but a chainsaw could hurt you if you didn't use or read the user manual. Same thing with fasting. It's a tool that is very powerful, get you amazing results if you read the user manual. It's a stress. And I know you've seen this, like women should not fast. It's too stressful. Well, that's like saying women should never exercise because it's too stressful. It's not necessarily the stress. It's not necessarily the stress that's bad. It's the amount of stress that you are not adapting to. It all applies to hormesis, which I talk about in the book. Hormesis is the principle that you apply a stress to a human being. As long as that human being adapts to the stress, now that human being is healthier and stronger and lives a longer life. But if that stress is too much to adapt to, you lose those results. You actually create harm to the body. You create inflammation and you see the opposite happen, right? Fasting applies there. All of the biohacks we talk about apply there. And of course, exercise. So with fasting, you don't just do it willy-nilly without reading the user manual. The first step, as I talk about in Metabolic Freedom, is to get fat adapted, to teach your metabolism first to burn fat instead of sugar. If you go into a fast being stuck as a sugar burner, it's going to make it very difficult to sustain that fast. Let's say it's 18 hours or so. You're not going to get the benefits. You're actually going to feel worse and actually do more harm than your body because your body's not familiar. It's not familiar with burning fat and using ketones. So the first step is to lower blood sugar levels, lower insulin levels. And once you've done that, which takes about a week or two, then you start to adapt to different fasting schedules. And yes, men definitely do it different than women. And women who are menstruating do it differently than women who are postmenopausal. They have different fluctuations in hormones that we need to make sure we align the fasting schedule with. So that is important. That is true. But it doesn't mean women should not practice fasting. It just means there's a time to do fasting or extended fast, and there's a time for them not to do it. Now, us guys, we could be a little bit more aggressive. We have a 24-hour hormone recycling pattern, and that's why men typically get faster fat loss results, and they could be more aggressive and benefit. But even with men, you don't want to do too much. I know your backstory is you tanked your hormones and you did way too much fasting in the past, and I've been guilty of doing that myself. So there's a balance. So the metabolism works in a balance. We have the anabolic state where we're activating mTOR, mechanistic targeted rapamycin. This is building and growing. This is important in spurts. You get this activated through protein and carbohydrates. Then you have the opposite of mTOR, which is the autophagy catabolic phase, which is more ketosis and fasting. Both are good, both are important, but too much on either side is an issue. I'll give you an example. Bodybuilders. Well, bodybuilders end up living a much shorter life than the average person. You ask the question, why? They're constantly in a growth phase, mTOR, mTOR, mTOR. They're not getting enough of the cleanup of autophagy, which is catabolic in spurts. You want autophagy. But then we have the people who do extreme fasting, extreme keto. I mean, we've seen them at conferences. It's
Yeah.
too catabolic. You lose muscle mass, you weaken your immune system. That's also bad. So the magic is in the feasting, and I'm not saying cheating, but the feasting,
Sure.
protein, healthy carbs, and then the fasting, the ketosis, where you actually break things down. When you go back and forth the right way,
Hmm.
that's where you stay in this hermetic zone and you benefit and extend your lifespan, adapt to the stress, and get stronger.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, 100% agree. And I like what you just said, healthy carbs. Can we just unpack that slightly so it doesn't confuse a lot of people? There are those who will say there are no healthy carbs. And then
Yeah.
others who are completely confused by what healthy carbs means because for the last 4 or 5 decades, we've been getting a lot of misinformation about what that means exactly. What's a healthy carb and what's so well, I'll let you unpack it. I want
Yeah.
which you explain in the book since you're the one that said that, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah. Well, 93% of Americans are eating way too many carbs. That's why they're unhealthy. They're what I call in a keto deficiency. Their first step is to eat less carbs and burn fat and work on their metabolism. Now, we hear this in the keto space. There's no such thing as essential carbohydrates, and that's true. There isn't. There's no such thing as essential carbs. There are essential proteins, which are essential amino acids. There are essential fatty acids, but no such thing as essential carbs. So, do we need carbohydrates? No. The body could create its own blood sugar, its own glucose via gluconeogenesis from fat and protein. But does that mean we should never have carbs? No, I don't think that's the answer either because carbohydrates are can be great for hormone health. It can be great, as you know, for gym performance, strength. So healthy carbohydrates are whole foods carbs, single ingredient carbohydrates. When you have worked on your metabolism and now you're healthy, you could incorporate healthy carbs and you'll process it well. You won't get a huge glucose spike and insulin spike. You'll actually get a nice, maybe 10, 15, 20 point increase in glucose and it'll go back to baseline after 2 hours. That's totally healthy, totally fine from healthy carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, fruits, even white rice. I personally do great with white rice, non-starchy vegetables. I mean, I know you're a big nightshade guy, so even if you could tolerate nightshades
Yeah.
as well, which might be blasphemy to the carnivore community. But Zane loves his nightshades. It's an inside joke that we have.
Yes, it
He,
is. Yeah.
he loves
I,
it. And
I'm a pepper and tomato kind of guy. I
you
just can't
are.
help it.
Well, the cover of Metabolic Freedom is a red pepper, so you should love that.
I do. Spicy. Yes.
So yeah, I mean, carbohydrates have its place. When you restrict carbs for too long, aka long-term ketosis or long-term carnivore, it could have a detrimental impact on your electrolyte balance, on your testosterone levels, on your thyroid levels. It's not going to happen for everyone. I mean, of course, there's outliers. We see people in our space, colleagues and friends of ours that we love and
Yeah.
appreciate that have been doing this for years and they look great and feel great, and that is totally fine. But that's not everyone. There's a
Right.
time and place for carbohydrates. The way I personally do it at this moment, my current routine, and keep in mind, this is my current routine. It works for me. It doesn't mean it will work for you. But
Mm.
Monday through Saturday, I do carnivore. I do a carnivore diet. I practice intermittent fasting. Sunday, I'll have 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrates in a single day, burn sugar for a day, and then go right back to fat burning on Monday. That works for me. That's metabolic flexibility. That's metabolic freedom, and that is the goal for most people to achieve that.
Mm. Gotcha. That kind of flex back and forth is what I guess what you're focusing on in the book is the freedom part of the metabolic freedom is that
Yeah.
being able to shift back and forth to keep things balanced and like you said, kind of an individual balance that each person kind of needs to figure out based on their needs, the benefits and risks. And so I've always appreciated that about you that you explain that every diet. I mean, even recently, I saw you explain every dietary strategy has its own benefits and risks, and we've got to learn how to manage those and balance those as individuals for what our goals are and where we are currently in our state of health. And so it's that the freedom part of it is
It.
throws some people off. They want to be told exactly what to
Yeah.
And I think people get stuck in a trap or in a mindset or ideology sometimes where they feel, can I do this? Can I do that? What are the rules? And I think helping people understand, like, your body, like you said early on, your body adapts. Your body's very smart. And if you keep doing the same thing for a while, it's going to adapt to that. And then that tool can be less effective over time because it's adapted to it. And you've got to shift things around a little bit and fuel some of the hormones, that, like you said, thyroid and testosterone, and take some of the stress away that gluconeogenesis can create with the stress hormones. And so it's because you're not eating carbs doesn't mean you're not making sugar. It's just the source, like you said. That the whole word essential kind of gets thrown around a little too much, I think, or without understanding that essential means you're in nutrition terms. Essential means your body cannot make it. So, like omega-6 and omega-3s are essential fatty acids. Saturated fat and monounsaturated fat, while they're good for us, they're not essential because our body makes monounsaturated and saturated fat. There's certain amino acids which are essential that our body can't make, but when we have those, we can make other amino acids. We need them all. Your body would die without glucose. But it's like, what is it your body needs right now to move the needle in the direction you want to go with your metabolism is really the question. It's not about demonizing real food.
Well said.
Which I mean, and I think that's what you're saying. It's just I'm trying, unpacking that with. Well, I think what the next thing I wanted to mention to you was we mentioned whole food, real food, and then we have processed foods and the seed oils, which the seed oil debate, fortunately, I think, has become front and center in the public conversation and politics as well as social media and health. And we see people on both sides who seem to have reasonable, maybe arguments. There seem to be reasonable people. And then we have, who there's people who don't get it. And there's people who just go, oh, no, we definitely need to avoid seed oils. So I'm assuming you address seed oils in the book.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big part of the chapter on processed foods. And I know you've been doing a lot of content lately on seed oils, and I love seeing it. I know you had Dr. Chris Kenobi on, who I've had on before. He's excellent. Was it Chris Kenobi awesome. Or was it? Yeah, it was.
I had Chris Kenobi, and I'm having Kate on.
And Dr. Kate,
soon.
Yeah. Yeah, they're leading researchers on this field on this topic of seed oils, right? And yeah, that's a big part of it because 80% of the food supply in the United States contains these inflammatory fats, these vegetable oils, seed oils, linoleic acid, polyunsaturated fats. They're all the same thing. They're highly unstable. They're highly inflammatory, as we know from Dr. Kate Shanahan. And the reason why, and I discussed this in the book, is because of the chemical structure of them. They're polyunsaturated fatty acids. So the word poly, of course, means many. Meaning, when we look at these fats through a microscope, it contains these double bonds, many double bonds. The more double bonds a fat contains, and the closely those double bonds are located to other double bonds, the more reactive they are to heat, pressure, and oxygen. Meaning when they react to heat, pressure, and oxygen, they go unstable. They oxidize. They become inflammatory. Similar to biting into an apple, leaving that apple on the counter, coming back 5 hours later, it turns brown. That's oxidation.
Right.
Well, how do they process these fats? Heat, pressure, and oxygen. So the exact three things that makes it go bad is, and not to mention all the chemical agents they put in it because it smells awful when you process them. Then it's put into a bottle that says canola oil, heart healthy, the American Heart Association puts their stamp of approval, or soybean oil, whatever it is. And then we heat it up even more by frying it or cooking with it. It makes it so unhealthy for our cells, for our metabolism. And we know that the half-life of these bad fats in our body is 680 days, meaning if we stopped eating them today, and there's your pup, if we stopped eating them today, 680 days later, these fats half of them will still be in our fat cells and our cell membranes, mitochondrial membranes, creating inflammation. There's also a study that I put in the book that I actually got from Dr. Kate Shanahan, so I want to give her credit, but it's a study done from Dr. Martin Grudfeld. And what Dr. Martin Grudfeld did is he was looking at the aldehyde contents. Aldehydes are carcinogenic. When you smoke cigarettes, it produces aldehydes in your body. That's one of the main reasons smoking cigarettes causes cancer. But they were looking at the aldehyde content from French fries that were fried in these vegetable oils. And it showed in the study that the aldehydes produced from a 5-ounce serving of French fries, which is about 20 to 25 French fries, produce the same amount of aldehydes from smoking 20 to 25 tobacco cigarettes. In other words, one French fry fried in vegetable oil, when you eat that one French fry, it's equivalent to smoking a tobacco cigarette. Yikes.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
And that's
so
not from the potato, that's from the oil itself.
yeah, correct. It's from the oil. It's from the frying the potato in the oil. Exactly. So we want to avoid it. You know, when I go to restaurants, you know how we roll, Zane. I always tell the server I'm allergic to the vegetable oil. I use my seed oil allergy card, which I actually, I don't know if this is going to be video too, but I have,
my it's on video.
Seed oil
the seed oil allergy card. Get one. Get
Yeah.
one today from Ben.
Yes, for free. Seedoilcard.com. You can get it for free. But I don't want to take the hit, right? I don't want these bad fats in my body for a long time. But here's the thing. This might be different than, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts here,
Okay.
because we might disagree here, maybe, which is good.
Sure.
But not all seed oils are bad for you. The reason why we get an argument from other people saying, but look at all these studies showing that it's actually not bad for you, it's actually healthy for you, is because they're looking at studies from seed oils that are not processed. These are, for example, sunflower oil, right? That's a seed oil. When you process it, it's really bad for you. But if it's not processed, if it's organic, cold pressed, and it's never heated, maybe you just have a little bit for salad dressing, that actually could be anti-inflammatory. So when we look at studies on processed seed oils versus, so adulterated seed oils, as they call it, versus unadulterated seed oils, very different mechanisms and very different things happen in the body. But the unfortunate thing is that almost all of the seed oils out there are processed, right? So it's kind of a mute argument out there. But the reason why seed oils can be healthy if they're not processed and not heated is because the cell membranes are partially made up of omega-6 fats, and it's actually helping the building, the structure of those fats if you get it from the right source, but most people are not. So the answer is to avoid seed oils because they're almost always processed. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I want to hear your thoughts with the whole processed versus unprocessed seed oils.
Well, I don't know how you get oil out of the seed without processing it. I mean, honestly, once you remove it from that food matrix, it's vulnerable. So what keeps it, and from what I understand, current place of understanding, what keeps it from oxidizing as much within the seed are the antioxidants, like vitamin E, very common in seeds and nuts. The antioxidants within the seed, which keep that unstable fat stable. If we notice where polyunsaturated fats tend to be contained, for the most part, in large amounts would be fish, which are usually in cold water, or they're in a nut, which is contained in a shell and a hard surface with antioxidants in there to keep it stable. And once we remove that oil from that food matrix, from the seed, the antioxidants usually are destroyed. And so that may be part of that processing element that you're talking about, but it's very hard to squeeze. I mean, if you're talking about soybean or a canola or cottonseed, I mean, those are just toxic from the go.
Yeah, those are always unhealthy.
Right. And so if you're eating sunflower seeds or you're eating nuts, PUFA in them, or eating fish with like 50% PUFA, you've got a contained, stable, fairly stable environment for that polyunsaturated fat. It's still unstable by nature because of the open double bonds, which allow oxidation. It just needs exposure to more oxygen. When these oils get in our system, these polyunsaturated fats, and they begin to be metabolized, well, we still have that open double bond where oxygen can like a free radical can come and create oxidation in that oil. And I think one of the studies in Dr. Cate's book, it was done in Padua, Italy, in the late 90s, showed a lower energy output from polyunsaturated fats within the cell, within the mitochondria, compared to monosaturated and saturated fat. If the saturated fat was the baseline of energy that you would get from a fat molecule, monounsaturated fat, which is slightly more, actually. I mean, you're talking about the baseline, say, is 100%. The monounsaturated fat was maybe 103, 104% of the energy of that saturated fat, so basically a 3% increase. The polyunsaturated fats, both omega-6 and omega-3, were greatly reduced at like 60% of the energy of a saturated fat from omega-6 and 40% of the energy that you would get from a saturated fat from omega-3. So we have a low energy output, okay, from these oils, which makes me think these are not our ideal fuel source. Polyunsaturated fats are an ideal fuel source for humans. We run much better on saturated and monounsaturated fats, which is why, in my opinion, this is getting a little philosophical, but why they're essential. This is why we don't make them. We make monounsaturated and saturated fats within our bodies from excess carbs or from food we eat, from the fat we eat, because that's our ideal fuel source. The ideal diet, human diet, these polyunsaturated fats made up maybe 1 to 5% of our total calories. It was a very small portion of our energy and of fat coming to our bodies by design, because they're meant for certain biological functions or chemical interactions, like you mentioned, with in our cell membranes for, when we have trauma to stimulate an immune response. They're not ideal for energy. And so they're there by nature to be unstable to stimulate an immune response when we have trauma. That's their job. In abundance, like we have now, where they made 80% of our fat calories and 30% of our total calories, well, we have just way too much response going on, that triggered response, that oxidative stress happening in our bodies all the time now, because as you said, it gets stored in our body for 680 days and it keeps building up to the point now we've got, instead of having 3 to 5% of our body fat being polyunsaturated fat, it's now closer to 20 to 30% of the average American's body fat. So I think it's a volume issue with a very unstable fat. The volume of unstable fat in our tissues has become unsustainable to counteract with the amount of antioxidants we have in our bodies, the amount of antioxidants we consume or that we endogenously create, like glutathione and ADH+. That was a long-winded answer. Basically, I think we have a volume problem, the amount we store in our tissue, to handle how oxidative and how inflammatory they are. Their role in our body is to be oxidative and inflammatory to trigger an immune response. It's not for energy. When we start eating them and consuming them in a way where we have to use them as a primary energy source because that's what's available, then we have a problem.
I agree with you 100%. I do. A lot of people think the solution, because we know that there's this huge imbalance, to your point, of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in the body. There's like a 20-to-1 ratio, a 20-to-1, meaning 20 omega-6 to 1 omega-3 average out there. It might be somewhere around there, those changes, but that's a huge discrepancy. I mean, we want closer to like a 1-to-1, depending on the organ or the system, but maybe a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. But the volume, to your point, the amount of these polyunsaturated fats. And unfortunately, people think the solution is to just take more omega-3s like fish oil to balance that out. But that is not the solution. Fish oil could be just as inflammatory as a vegetable oil. And I know that might be a crazy statement to people, but if you understand what Zane and I just said, it's the chemical structure that makes them unstable. In the fish, the oil is fine. In the vegetable, the oil is fine. Once it's extracted, that's when it's a problem. So the solution is not to just take a whole bunch of fish oil. The solution is to lower your polyunsaturated fatty acid content from diet. That is the way to balance out the 6 to the 3, not to just take more 3, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it was like the little lady that swallowed the spider to catch the fly. It's like, hey, you don't eat spiders and don't eat flies. Just reduce the intake altogether. We don't need to swallow the spider to catch the fly. We need to just not eat so many flies. And so it's kind of like, that's, I love that you said it, because there is a lot of confusion around that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Oh, here's the answer. No, they both are unstable. They're both polyunsaturated fats. And so they're both vulnerable to oxidative stress because of the open double bonds. So I think we're on the same page on that. So but it's a complex issue. I mean, it's like most people who I know who don't say, well, no, seed oil is bad, but they would be able to. They don't know why. And I think for many years there were things I thought was the omega-6 imbalance. I thought it was, and it's really, I just knew that they had a negative response and didn't belong in our bodies 5 or 6 years ago. But I couldn't have explained it to you like that 5 or 6 years ago. And I think there's been an enlightenment of the impact of these oils over the last 2 to 3 years, thanks again, as you mentioned, to Dr. Kate Shanahan, who has really unpacked the biochemistry on these oils better than anybody that I've seen. And she's the queen. I mean, she's been telling us to avoid these oils for 20 years. People are finally starting to listen, but it's It's not simple. It's not as simple as people like to make it out to be. It's very complex. And that's why I think a lot of people miss it. A lot of people in the health space miss it. There's a lot of medical doctors who miss it, who just don't quite grasp how these oils could be so detrimental. It's just not, you can't treat it all fats the same. You just can't, you just can't.
And it's even been politicized, right? Like the seed oil thing is like a conservative thing. It's like, oh my gosh, no, it's a human thing. It doesn't matter what your political party is at all. It's a human thing. Yeah, Dr. K has done an amazing job. She's been the leading driver, giving awareness to why these are so bad for us. Dr. Pompa has been as well. He put this on my radar back in like 2016. Now it's very popular for people to talk about it, but it's still so misunderstood. But if we just go back to biochemistry, the way that Zane and I explained it, then you'll get it. Because saturated fats have 0 double bonds, making them very stable. Monounsaturated fats have a single double bond. That's why it's called mono, making them not as stable as saturated fats, but way more stable than polyunsaturated fats, right? Those are going to be used for energy, like you mentioned with the study. Your mitochondria could use them for energy. These polyunsaturated fats are mitochondrial poison. That's why you are inflamed. You gain weight. You have weight loss resistance. You feel tired all the time. It triggers all these diseases, chronic disease. Make the swap. Just eat more animal fats. Eat more fruit-based fats. So butter, ghee, duck fat, lard from healthy pigs, even avocado oil and olive oil. Those are mono, but just make coconut oil. Yeah, just make sure the avocado and the olive are just not cut with the seed oil, right? Make sure it's in a dark glass bottle because there's some ways to get around that. It's challenging because when you go to these restaurants, I know even fancy, healthy, I'm putting that in quotation marks, these restaurants that claim to be like the healthiest restaurant in town, I will go and ask them, what do you cook your food in? What oils do you use? And it's sometimes they'll say, oh, we use olive oil. And then I'll say, is it cut with anything? And can you show me the bottle? And they'll literally bring out the bottle and it'll be like a 50-50 blend of like canola and olive oil, right? They cut it because it's cheap and it's at Whole Foods supermarket. That's a hot food bar. You have to be really diligent. That's why I have the seed oil card. I treat it serious. It is an allergy. We're not lying. You are going to get an inflammatory response, so you don't want to take the hit. This is really big. You make that simple swap, your metabolism will thank you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how many olive oils are cut with these cheaper oils. Some label it, some don't. And I think we've seen the stories of like in Italy and Spain where the police have come and shut down these olive oil plants because they're mixing some odd, goopy, oily, crude stuff in with their olive oil, but they're not labeling and they're selling it as high grade olive oil. And this is a real crime in Italy and Spain.
Yeah,
I mean, they're shutting them down. It's like millions of dollars worth of oil being shut down and locked up. But when you go to the grocery store and you see these, see a quart of olive oil for $8, you can pretty much assume that's been cut with something. If you want pure olive oil, you're going to spend about $1 an ounce or more, depending on the quality of olive oil, and to get something that hasn't been cut with one of these oils. And you have to do some research on that brand. And it's unfortunate. That's why it's so much easier to go with something like a coconut oil or a butter or a, tallow or lard, like you mentioned. It's just so much easier because of the processing is so much simpler and the sourcing is so much easier to determine is just pure. But it's purity.
Now, I will say this though, the tallow thing, that's starting to become popular, and tallow is great. I love beef tallow. It's probably my number one cooking fat. I also use it for skincare. But we're seeing restaurants like these franchises like Buffalo Wild Wings and Steak and Shake. They're starting to use beef tallow and say, oh, we don't use seed oils, we use beef tallow. And you might think, okay, great, that's a good option. However, here's how they're getting away with it. Yes, they're using beef tallow, but Buffalo Wild Wings, and I don't know about Steak and Shake. I'd have to investigate them, but we need to check them out. They're adding a ton of other preservatives and other artificial or inflammatory ingredients in the beef tallow. They're kind of cutting it in a different way, not with the seed oil, with other preservatives. So you got to make sure it's 100% beef tallow. When you ask these restaurants, okay, you cook with beef tallow, it's awesome. Is it 100% beef tallow, or are you adding anything else? Oh, I don't know. Can you take a photo of the beef tallow and show it to me? They'll do it, all right? And then you're going to see there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that you can't even pronounce. So you got to be careful. Just because they're using beef tallow doesn't mean it's actually healthy for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to somewhere like that, kind of that fast
franchises,
franchise kind of food, fast casual kind of dinner, they're cutting costs wherever they can, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it's very, very, very true. I think your best bet is to be fixing your own meals 90% of the time, and then be diligent where you can to ask for, like you do, use a butter or an olive oil or that's not cut or something similar.
Yep.
And just avoid anything that could be fried or sauteed in a restaurant altogether, because you're rolling the dice. You really don't know what they're going to do back there. So
Great advice.
that's how I approach it. I mean,
That's what we do, man. We've been to many dinners. That's how we roll.
we try to limit the risk by just making better choices and realize, your best bet is always in your own frying pan.
I do from time to time, but there's the body's amazing. There's a percentage you could get away with, right? Not the percentage we're having these days.
No.
Way too high. There's a small percentage.
Yeah, it's because most people are eating. I mean, 75% of the diet is coming from processed food or restaurant food, right? And that's where the majority of them is coming in, from restaurant food and the processed food. If that's 75% of your diet, you're ingesting these on a large scale. That's where the 80% of your fat calories is coming in from these oils. That'd be impossible for you and I cooking at home to have that level of these polyunsaturated fats coming into our diet when we're eating whole food. We're cooking ourselves using these fats. We're not, so the rare times that sometimes you get a steak that's been cooked on a griddle with some, one of these oils in it, is like, okay, there's a minimal hit. And then because it's so rare, our bodies can filter
Adapt
out
and do fine. But
over
it's in
time.
you're in that hormetic zone still.
Mhm.
One of the things that sometimes I order Uber Eats or DoorDash. Like, how do we
Right.
order food delivery without taking the hit? Because it's different. You're not at the restaurant. You can't show them the card. So I'll give a tip for your audience. Sometimes when you order like through Uber Eats or DoorDash, you could put an allergy note. And if there's an option for that, I'll write, I'm allergic to vegetable oils, and I'll give a list of them, canola, etc. The following are safe, like butter, olive oil. I could do any of those, make sure they're not cut. Sometimes they don't have that option to put that in the notes. So I'll call the restaurant and I'll say, hey, I'm going to order some Uber Eats from your restaurant now. I just want to let you know I'm allergic to these oils. When I place the order, right before I place the order, can you make sure that with my order, my name is Ben, you'll see it come through, you could use butter or olive oil? And they'll say, yeah. And sometimes they'll say, no, they don't have that. And then I don't order for them. That's how you do it when you're ordering food to your house.
Gotcha. Good call. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little extra step to make sure you're getting what you need. That's what it takes. When you want to be diligent about your health, we take a couple extra steps, but in the long run, it pays off. I think we've seen enough shortcuts in the diet space and the weight loss space, and I think you talk about this quite a bit, where it's like the goal has become more about the weight loss you mentioned early on than it has about health. And you got to get healthy to then lose the weight, because it's a malfunction of the metabolism of high insulin levels, of cellular inflammation, which we're talking about the entire time here, things that impact insulin levels and cellular inflammation. But we see quick fixes, right? We see a lot of quick fixes. We see a lot of things being sold. Weight loss is commoditized. And
Keto is as well.
Yeah. And it's like, these snacks or these quick fixes and shakes and stuff, that's just like, it's trying to find a silver bullet or an easy button, so to speak, for something that actually takes some effort. It takes some work. It takes some thought. It takes some diligence. And if that's bad news, I'm sorry, but that's what it takes, is to be conscious and deliberate about what you're putting in your body. And
it's so important. You're right. It takes effort, but if you treat your health casually, you're going to end up a casualty. That's the fact. And a lot of people say it's so expensive to get healthy. Well, wait until they hand you the bill for getting sick.
Right.
That bill is super expensive, and it's sometimes hard to pay. So yeah, it might be a little bit more to pay extra now to stay healthy, but think about your future. And the cool thing about getting healthy, it really doesn't have to be that expensive. Intermittent fasting is free. Grounding outside and getting sunshine is free. Getting quality sleep is free. Exercising is free. There's a lot of things you can do for free. But if you think getting healthy is expensive, wait until they hand you the bill for getting sick. That is not the bill you want to get handed to you. It's a bad bill to pay.
Oh yeah. No, most of my clients are, over 40, over 50, some of them. And it just gets more expensive. I mean, your health is harder to reverse the older you get. Those conditions are harder and harder to turn around at that age, because your hormones are diminished, and you just don't have the recovery that you did in your 30s. And so the longer you kick that can down the road, the harder it's going to be to get your health back. And a lot of them, I know a lot of very affluent people who sacrificed their health during their time of building their business, the time of their family. It just wasn't a priority. And they'd write any check at this point to get their health back if they thought it would work. And that's not really, the check is not the problem. The money is not the problem. It's the doing and then letting the body heal. It's the doing of cleaning up your diet, of making good choices, and then letting the body heal over time, where the work gets done. And your health. We're given two things. We have time and health, right? And you can't buy more time, but if you could take care of your health, you might get more time. And so that if you want more time, focus on your health. I mean, that's the payoff, is time in a healthy state, because there is a lot of health and longevity and optimal health in managing one of these metabolic diseases. It's in preventing or reversing if needed.
That's right. Yeah. We know the old saying, like, a person who's healthy has many wishes. The person who's sick has one wish, and that is to get healthy. Cancer, autoimmune disease, chronic fatigue, diabetes does not care how much money you have, what car you drive, type of watch you're wearing. It does not distinguish. We are all the same. You put us all in a good fire, it'll be the same result. It doesn't matter how much money you have, right? So the goal is to prioritize our health. The quote that I put in the book is an Einstein quote. He said, "Intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them." Right? We want to be geniuses with our health. We want to prevent. We want to be proactive, not reactive. And if you are being reactive now because you have health issues, well, the body's amazing. Just remove the interference. I mean, we've discussed so many things here: lower insulin, practice time-restricted feeding, stop snacking, get rid of processed junk, eat organic as much as possible. And there's just so many things that you can learn on your podcast and the book, and the information's out there. The body is amazing. It will adapt no matter if you're 40 or 70. And one of the myths out there with metabolism, by the way, is that we have either a slow metabolism or a fast metabolism. And that's not even the full picture, right? The metabolism doesn't really work in speeds. It works in efficiency or inefficiency.
Right.
And the goal is not even to have a super fast metabolism, because the animals in the wildlife that have the fastest metabolism have the shortest lifespan. It's not about a fast metabolism. It's about an efficient metabolism, right? Burning fat, burning sugar, burning whatever substrate is available. But the whole metabolism conversation, people believe that they have a slow metabolism. That's why they can't lose weight. Well, when I dug into the research on the metabolism and metabolic rate to see, does it really slow down as we age? And if it does, how much? It's really not that much. There's a study I put in the book that shows our metabolic rate, which is the amount of calories our bodies burn just to sustain life, pretty much stays the same until we reach age 60. Now, at age 60, then there's about a 0.7% deficiency that starts to happen every year after that point. But here's why that happens: muscle loss. So your message, Zane, and what you do of building lean muscle will prevent that from ever happening. The reason the metabolism becomes inefficient after age 60 in the study is because of muscle loss. So if you could preserve that muscle loss, build enough of it by the age of 60, that will never happen to you, meaning you could have a healthy metabolism at age 93 as if you were 23 years old. And to me, that's super exciting.
True. Yeah. You just hang on to it, to keep working at it and hang on to it.
Right.
Sarcopenia is a real thing. And if you don't stimulate it, then it will dissipate. It will go away. You will eat it. You will literally eat it and turn it into sugar. Absolutely. Well, Ben, I know I appreciate all of your time you've spent with us here today. Tell people how they can get the book. I think you've got a special pre-order time going right now. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a special offer. So the book is going to be released May 13th, 2025. It's called Metabolic Freedom. Dr. Mindy Pels wrote the foreword, and the book has endorsements from Gary Brecka, Dr. Jason Fung, Dr. Daniel Pompa, Dr. Kate Shanahan, Megan Ramos, Dr. Eric Berg, Dr. Ken Berry. And we're giving away a free course. So let me rewind this for a second. For anyone who orders the book, pre-order the book, or if you're listening to this after the fact, you'll still get the gift. We're giving away a free course which is a metabolic freedom course. There's 12 lessons that I recorded myself on the metabolism, fasting, keto, stubborn fat loss, along with exclusive interviews in the course that you cannot find anywhere else, not on my podcast, not on my YouTube channel. These interviews I did with Gary Brecka, Dr. Jason Fung, Dr. Daniel Pompa, Megan Ramos, and Cynthia Thurlow. So 5 interviews along with the course. This is about $1,000 retail value that you'll get for free as long as you go to metabolicfreedombook.com, and Zane's going to put that in the notes, metabolicfreedombook.com. It's going to take you to a page. You'll see the free course and the interviews. You're going to have different links to order the book, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or wherever you live in the world. You'll go back to the page, put your email, name, and order number, and as soon as you submit that, you'll be sent an email with login access to the course and the exclusive interviews. So that is my gift to your audience. I would love for you to pre-order the book. The book, first half of the book is the problems on metabolic health. We discussed a few of them today, but there's a lot more. The second half are the solutions, and then it's all tied together with a 30-day plan to achieve metabolic freedom, a week-by-week, day-by-day plan. You mentioned people like to tell me what to do. Well, this is a 30-day plan to tell you what to do at the end of the book, and the book's going to be available on hardcover, Audible. I'm narrating the Audible, and also Kindle. So I would love for your audience to get it if this conversation resonated with you. It's metabolicfreedombook.com.
Yes, we will put that in the show notes. So I appreciate that. And of course, I love that you did a course to prep people for the book. That's amazing with those experts in there. I think that builds a lot of confidence around the book, but and energy as well. I think that gives people something tangible and something like they're engaging and interactive to do. So that's incredible. Great idea, Ben.
Thank you. Yeah, do it for your next book.
Oh gosh, don't say that. Yeah, no, it's a lot of work to write a book and to put a course together for it too. I mean, I know you've been working on this for a long time, and the effort you put into it, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on and telling us about it. Again, that course is brilliant, because if anyone's ever gotten a book, like, I know I need to read that. I need to read that book, or I need to listen to that book. I need to start that. You have this course to jumpstart your effort and jumpstart your energy. And once you take that course, 1, you'll have a better understanding of what's in the book. But 2, you're going to have more energy and more motivation, I think, to really dig in and get more information and apply it to your life. Because like you said, it's not just the problem, it's the solutions. And if you get the solutions in there and put in place, you start seeing that freedom that you're after. So
amen.
I mean, that's what it's all about. Well, thank you again, Ben. We'll get that in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you in person soon somewhere. I think we're probably trying to show up somewhere in the same place.
We always make it happen, bro. I love you, Zane. I love what you're doing. I love your podcast. Your work is amazing. So grateful to be on your show and talk about this very important subject. I'm really excited about the book, and I'm excited to collaborate with you. You've been on my podcast a couple of times. You'll definitely come back, and we'll do some more collaborations together.
I love that. Anytime, come let me know. Just twist my arm, make me come to Miami, Ben.
Oh,
please.
yeah, it's so hard, right? To bring you down here, get out of Tennessee to beautiful Miami.
I'm freezing as it is. All right. Yes. All right. Well, Ben, I will talk to you very soon, I think.
Thank you, bro. Talk to you soon.